Hey guys, welcome back to one more episode on setting up a stores API using Laravel. And in this episode, we are going to see how to set up roles and permissions for different users. Why roles and permissions are needed within a system? It's because you need to restrict some of the resources being accessed by each and every user. And that means your system is designed in such a way that, let's say, if you are a system admin, then you can maybe access each and everything within the overall system. But then if you are, let's say, a stores owner, then you are maybe limited to only accessing the resources which is very specific to your stores, like your customers or your stores or the product lines which you are creating. So to set this up, there is a package which is pretty much used by a larger community called Spatie Laravel-Permissions. This is what we are going to use in the system, and it's pretty much simple to set it up. As soon as you install, it provides you all the migration tables where you can set up your roles and permissions for different user, as well as it provides you the middlewares which you can directly use to maybe restrict some of the endpoints from accessing from some of the users. So without much delay, let's get started. So this library, which I was talking about, Spatie Laravel-Permissions, this is the documentation page. If you want to see, it pretty much allows a user to be given any kind of role and also to provide some permissions. So we are going to go with assigning different roles, and the permissions will be assigned to different roles. So in that way, we can have different roles defined within the system, as well as different permissions which get attached to these roles. So to get started with this, maybe if you can also see that you can also use it within your Blade templates, like if you're even in your HTML, the web side of things. But we are more focused on the API side right now, so that's what I'm gonna do. So to install it, let's say I'll go to installation in Laravel, and it has to be installed on something which is higher than 6. I'm already using 8, and installation is pretty much easy. Composer require is what I need to call. I'm gonna do that. Let me go to my composer, or maybe I'll go to my terminal and run this command. Composer requires Spatie Laravel permission. As soon as I run it, it gets installed. Yep, and it must be already be there. Is there an issue in my composer? I think I added some unwanted. Yep, okay. So that's done. Hopefully I can save. Okay, just gonna override it, I think, because I added some unwanted characters. It gives me that error. Maybe I can reduce this a little. So that's added now, and the next step is that I need to add the provider. So maybe I'll go to config.php, config.php on, okay, it's not showing. App config, it's app.php. Go to the bottom. It's not config.php, it's app.php. And then add it under providers. So these are all the providers which are already there. And then I add even this one, which is what's wrong? Okay, copy paste. This documentation is a little tedious to copy paste. Okay, so that's also done. That permission service provider is also added. Next step is to publish the migrations as well as the configuration file, which is needed. So I'm gonna even copy that, and then to publish PHP artisan vendor publish. Provider is permission service provider, so that should ideally add a couple of things. One is this permission.php, which pretty much says what all tables are going to get created, which is going to be roles, permissions, model as permissions, model as roles, and different other columns, which is going to get created. So there are different configurations based on your usage type, you can configure it. So this is what I'm going to keep the default one. Also, one other thing which might have gotten added is, if you go to the database and migrations, you can see that there are some migrations already added. We only had earlier this create user tables and maybe the reset password and everything, but now it has created a create permissions table, which in turn has the roles and permissions migrations script already available. So all that now we need to do is to run this migration. So maybe we can check it once before we do that. I think it's fine. We can do a migration right away. So for that, all that I need to do is to do a PHP artisan migrate. So I'm already pointed to a database. In the last episode I had shown you how to do that. So as soon as I do this, it's migrated. So if I go to my database and refresh, you can see that it has already created some of the tables which were already there, but then it has also created tables like roles has permissions, model has roles, model has permissions. So this model is nothing but in our case it's a user model. So as soon as we start attaching the roles to users, we will start seeing this table getting populated with that. So that's also done. So let's go back to the documentation once more. So this is already done. Migrate we already did. Next step is ideally to associate the user with the roles. So even before that, we need to start creating the roles. So whatever I'm going to do right now is to create a seeder for that. So it's easy to create. I'm just going to create something called as a roles and permissions seeder. So for that, I can do PHP artisan make seeder, and I'm going to say roles and permissions seeder. I guess that will be enough for roles and permissions seeder. Roles and permissions seeder. Yep. So that should create a seeder within the roles and permissions seeder. If you can see, that's created. And one more seeder which I'm going to create is, if I want to see what I'm talking about right now, if you go to our database, we don't have any users. So I'm going to create some users by running a database seeder right now. So it's very simple. You uncommit whatever you see which by default is available within the database seeder, and this in turn is going to create 10 users for me. So before I do that, I'm going to go to my factory and make some modifications. So factory is also something which got created when we had created the Laravel project. So within the factory, you can see all of the fields are already having some faker values. That means it will fake some of the usernames, emails and passwords for us. One change which I'm going to do is to modify this, because if you remember in the last episode where we were preparing the login feature, we were accepting the password, and then the user model itself was translating that into or at least it was encrypting the password. So whatever we need to do is we just need to directly pass the username or at least the password and the user. If you go back, let's say, to the user PHP models, then you can see that I had something called as a set password attribute. So as soon as we set a password, then it was doing the encryption over here itself, and it's already taken care. That's the reason I said we can maybe do this. We don't need to encrypt it over here. The decrypt part can happen within the user model itself. So I'm just going to keep a password which is as per the validations which we had set, which is like minimum one uppercase and one character and some numbers. So that's the password I have kept. And with this, I'm going to do a seeding so that I can show you what is going to happen. PHP artisan migrate db seed is the command to seed your database. So this is right now going to seed your users table with 10 records. The database seeding is complete. If I go back to my table, refresh, you're going to see 10 records which is just generated, and you can also see that the password is already encrypted, so that's also taken care. So this is not yet attached to any of the roles. That's what the next step we are going to do. This is only creating the users which we need for testing. So I'm going to do one more thing. I'm going to move this out of this. This is currently, the user creation is currently happening within the database seeder. Instead, I'm going to use another class for a seeder class. I'm going to call it user seeder. That's what I'm going to create. So it should create that, and we have a run function here. So I'm going to move this within that within this one. So it's easy. Maybe I can do one thing. I can directly use the import. So use app. So this is done. So our run is over here, and the modification which we might have to do is this call. I'm just modifying, and inside this I need to pass the class which needs seeding. User seeder class is what we are going to use for seeding that, and we are also going to use the roles and permissions just in a bit. Before that, let me also do migrate refresh. This is going to drop all the tables. I think fresh, and then I just say seed. So this is going to drop all the tables and do a migration and then seed all the data. So let's do that. So it's dropping all the tables and then reseeding. So it again worked. You can see that the records now have changed because it's again faking some of the new records for us. So DB seeder, I have already moved the user seeder outside, which was actually executing right earlier within the database seeder. I have moved it to its own class right now, and now with that info, I'm going to create some user roles and permissions which we can then attach to these users. So I'm going to again create those, because these are some things which can we can use a seeder itself to create all these roles and permissions as the first step within the system, and then all of the other kind of data can come in using the API calls or something. So even for testing, let's say your API, it's better that you write your own seeder so that you can end-to-end test your different API which you have created. So I'm going to start creating some of the roles and permissions within the system. So in our system, at least the stores, there are different roles which can be there. Let's say starting with a super admin who can do anything. So it's like the god mode within the system, who can do anything within the system. And then comes the system admin. Maybe to support a super admin, I can create some system admins, and I can start with some store owners who are going to create stores within the system. And then to support those stores, we can maybe have some store managers to support those stores, specific stores. So, and then comes all the customers who might come to the system and then just do a browsing and maybe do some purchase within the store system. So these are some of the roles which I have identified within the system, but we can always extend it as and when the system grows. Let's say it becomes the next, if your system becomes the next Amazon, then you can even include multiple new roles and then extend it further. So that's the design we are going to follow. So and each role might be having different permissions associated. So let's start designing different permissions which can be there within the system to start with. So I'm going to refer something which I already created and then use that to create some of the roles and permissions, because I have progressed to a great extent in creating all of these roles and permissions and also creating endpoints. So if you go to the documentation back once, then there are some things which they are recommending that we do. They are saying you can after you maybe create the database seeder, you can discover that it's best to flush the package cache after seeding to avoid cache conflict errors. So I'll just do this first bit as the first step itself. So I'm going to include that as the first step in the run. Forget cache permissions. Maybe, I don't know, this is something they are recommending to start with, and then comes all the other things later. Let's say this is the first step, and you can create multiple permissions and roles already. So for my system, I'm going to start with a permission like so create I'm just going to say create permissions for stores. So maybe I'll start with a permission Spatie permission create. It's like the regular create function within Laravel Eloquent, and I can maybe start with a name. These are permissions, so I have already defined some permissions, something like so I have a add user permission, edit user permission, delete user permission. I have defined lot many, so I'm going to grab all of those, maybe all of the different ones which I have identified. I'm going to use those to create all of these different roles and permissions. So if you can see, I have an add user permission, edit user permission, delete user, approve store, suspend store, add store, edit store, delete store. There are so many permissions which I have identified, which I might use within my system for giving access to different users. Maybe all of these permissions, let's say, is possible for all of these permissions are available for a system admin. So he will have all the permissions, but the rest of the other users, maybe let's say a store owner might only be having an add store, edit store, delete store, and add product line, edit line, delete stuff. Some of it is very relevant for some of the users. Let's say a view product is very much relevant for a store browser. Let's say some customer who comes into the store and wants to look at all the products, so he will have a view product permission. So I'm going to start with the first permission, adding all these permissions. Add user as the first permission. So similarly, I can have so why is it the undefined method? It's just that it's not yet picking up all of these. But similarly, I am having for, let's say, the first bit of permissions are for add, edit, delete. So these are maybe permissions for creating users, which is for a system admin or a super admin. And then I can also have different permissions for approvals. Let's say if this is something which a system or a super admin will do, which are different permissions to approve a store or suspend a store. So let's say if I'm creating a store within this system, then it will go to the super admin for approval. Once he approves the store after looking through each and everything about the store is when he is going to approve the system, if it conforms to the guidelines and policies of the overall system. So we can even suspend that store later if they maybe default on some of the things like taxation and everything. That's where the suspend store feature is also there. And again, once suspended, they can also at a later point activate that store again. So maybe those are different permissions which is possible with the store admin, or not store admin, maybe a system admin or the super admin. So I'm going to add more and more permissions which are there, which I have identified for this system. I'm just going to grab and drop all of that here. So these are my different permissions if you want to just go through. But for me, for this store, these are some of the permissions which I have identified. Let's say for brand creation, add brand, edit brand, delete brand, product lines, edit product line, delete product lines, and then you have managing different products and even viewing products. These are different permissions which are possible within my system, but depends on your system. If you're building something, let's say, which has more and more permissions possible, then you can keep adding those. But this is the gist of how you do it. And then comes the part where you can have different roles. The first part was all permissions, and now comes the different roles which is maybe possible within my shopping system. So in this case, I have identified, let's say, as a super admin, as somebody who can do any stuff within the store, and then I have a system admin who can maybe manage my overall system, but then he might have a less number of permissions compared to a super admin. Then comes a store owner who might only be allowed to create his own stores, manage his stores, and then look at his customers maybe. And then I have a store admin who might be able to only do maybe upload some products for the table, create some product lines, or do all those stuff. And then comes the customer role, which is more like a role which is associated with somebody who's not just a browser, who's somebody coming to your website or your portal, but then he is more signing into your solution. So he's more like a logged in user for you. So I might attach that user as a customer maybe. So that again depends on how you want to design your system. So these are the different roles identified, and creating the role is pretty simple. Maybe I can show you to start with one role. I'm going to create. I'm just going to say create the specific role, and I'm going to name the first role, which is maybe a super admin role, or maybe a system admin, or maybe I can say a super admin. Then a super admin is created, and we can also give permissions too. So I can just say give permissions to. It's again a function. Then I'm just going to say permission all. That means he can do anything within this system because he is the complete owner of the overall system. Permission. So this is the one I was looking for. Permission all. Yeah, that's how it is. Role. I guess this is the right one. Okay. So maybe there were a couple of things, models, permissions. Okay, so role, this is the right one. Create and then have all the permissions needed. It's still showing some error, but I think it's just because it's not identifying some of these after I added it. Maybe if I relaunch this, it should work fine. But then this is the first user I have created, which is at least the first role which I have created, called super admin. And I am giving a permission of all to the super admin, so that he has all of these permissions with him to do anything within the system. And any new permission that I add should also get associated with him. If let's say I do reseeding, so that's what it is. So that's the first role I have created, and then similarly I can create multiple other roles. Let's say if I now start with system admin as a role, that's my new role as attached to this user, and then I can just give permissions to, is that okay? I think it is give permission to maybe this is where I'm going to limit the number of things he can maybe do. So I'm going to say it's going to ask for an array of things, so I can just pass one by one. So what are the different permissions? Maybe I can choose to do all of that. So maybe this guy can do approving a store and suspending a store, and maybe let me check what I add user. Okay, he's also allowed to do adding a user. Maybe he'll not be allowed to delete a user. Add, maybe we can let him do more than that, because I think as a store as an admin, or at least the system admin, he should be allowed to handle something more than just approving. So just that's the reason maybe I'm just adding some more for this user. So this role can do maybe add a user, edit user, and delete user. He can also create stores, add stores, maybe edit stores, and then maybe delete stores. Rest of the things maybe the other and even he can do maybe something called as approve store and suspend store. So this is his scope of things that he can do. All of these permissions are possible for him. So this is what we are associating for this user. Not the user, but at least for the system admin role, these are the different permissions possible. Then similarly, I can create different different roles and associate different permissions. I'm just going to grab all of that now because there are at least some 3-4 which I have already created. So you can always check this. So I have some more roles created for, let's say, a store owner. I am creating a role called store owner where he can maybe I'm giving too much permission for him. For a store owner, he can maybe add a user. He can maybe add a brand. I think ideally I should have said add store, edit store, and delete store. So this is something maybe I'll have to tweak it a little. Okay, this is fine. I think this is more to do with adding stores, editing stores, deleting stores. Maybe to an extent we can even control it within our middleware or somewhere within our API. If the store does not belong to him, then he should not be allowed to delete or edit. That check we might have to do within our level itself. Let's say when you're writing the middleware or something. So that's something we can always handle. But then these are some of the different things which he can do, but within his store, permitted towards his maybe only his stores. And then comes the store admin. I think I have added already. Okay, this is more of a store admin where again I think I have wrongly represented this. It should be ideally add, edit, and delete stores, not user, because user creation is with the system admin or a super admin. And then maybe this guy can edit brand, but adding a brand can be restricted. Store owner can only do that. This guy can only edit a brand, edit product line, add product, edit product, delete product. So I'm just giving some things which is possible for this user. Again, I can maybe this is for a regular customer who is coming in for shopping. Maybe he's not allowed to do any of this, but then he's only allowed to view some of these products. So in this way we can limit some of the endpoints for just browsing through some of the things. So these are the different permissions and roles which is possible. And I'm going to do something over here. I'm also going to include this first thing. I'm going to also create the roles and permissions seeder instance, and I'm also going to do a seeding now. So let's start doing that. I'm going to refresh. Hopefully it failed. That's okay. So I think the permission is wrong somewhere, so I need to go back and see. I think this is the problem. Permission should be coming from, this is actually models, that's the reason. So now it should be fine. So even the other error which it was giving over here was because of that. So now I think if you do a refresh, fresh seeding, it should work. So that's created the seeding for even the roles and permissions. So if I go back to my DB and refresh, so the user creation has happened, but still that as attaching of the roles and permissions has not yet happened. But then we have all these permissions, the roles already created within the database, like super admin, system admin, and all that. And if I go to the permissions table as well, there are different permissions available within. There are different permissions which is already added, and the association is happening more at this role has permissions, where the mapping, this is where the mapping is happening between the role permission and the role. And you should ideally be seeing all of these getting populated as and when a user is attached with the roles of permission. Let's say if I'm attaching a user with a role, then I can see starting these things getting filled in. And if I directly attach a user with some permissions, then this table will get populated. So that's the next step we are going to do, which is to attach these users to these the created users to different roles. So that's what I'm going to do next. So for that, I'm going to use this user seeder. So if I go to the user seeder, I'm going to create, right now it's saying create factory of, maybe I can even modify this. Let's say I just need one user. I can just say count, and then I create the user, and then maybe I can loop through each user. I can call an each, and within each, I can pass the user which is created, each user which is created, and then start attaching the permission roles for attach. I can just call attach or assign role, and maybe it will give some error because there are some things which we need to still take care. So I'm going to create this first user as the super admin. So the first user who's going to get created within this, I removed the 10 to 1 now. So we should not be seeing more than one user over here, and we should also see the one role associated here. So I'm going to do a seeding here, but then I am hoping it's going to give an error because some things are missing still. So it's already giving an error. That means it's saying undefined method assign role. That means I need to go to my user table and do something over here, which is to include something called as has roles. So this is actually something which is a trait which lets us include some of those functions for attaching or assigning roles and permission for a user. As soon as you include this trait in the user, it should now allow us to do whatever we are trying to do here, which is assigning a role. So let's do one more refresh, and it's successful now. So let's go back, refresh, and you can see that one user with ID, model ID is 1, and it is associated with role ID 1. So I have a role with ID 1, which is super admin, and the user who's created now is 1, who's now become the super admin. So he has all the things. He can do anything within the system right now because we have associated him as a super admin. Similarly, we can keep creating more and more users within the system and attach them with multiple roles. Let's say if I have two more users created, and I'm going to say they are going to be system admin. That's the assignment I'm going to do. And if I again do a seeding, again excuse me, you should at least see 3 users created now. And if you go to this roles, there are three associations right now where it says role ID 1 is associated with model ID 1. That means user ID 1 is associated with role ID 1, and there are remaining 2 users are assigned with role ID 2. So who are these users? The other 2 users, 2 and 3, are now system admins. So similarly, I can keep creating multiple users within the system. I can say the another 4 users are going to be store owners. So these are the different roles which is possible. I have a store owner, I have a store admin, and I have customers. So I'm going to create more and more users over here so that we see so I maybe have a 6 store admin. That's what they are. And then maybe I'll create some 10 users also. So we have a system now with some users who are having different roles and permissions right now. So this is my store admin, and finally I am the customer. I am creating those 10 customers. So ideally I should have now 16, 20, 23 users created as soon as I run this seeding. created. If I go and refresh, you can see there are 23 users created, and each and everyone will have a role associated with them. So there are at least, I guess, 23 roles and permissions created. You can see the last 10 of them are all customers. Then you have these 6 guys who are store admins, then 4 members who are store owners, 2 system admin, 1 super admin. So all of these users are already created, and then the association or the assignment of their different roles has also happened. You will not see anything in this table because we did not directly assign any roles or permissions for these users. So this is also done. Now let's look at how can we see all of these within let's say an API endpoint. So I'm going to create, what do I have as an API endpoint right now? I'm going to go to admins, and I'm also going to restrict, like I told, I can create a middleware with whatever this Laravel permissions package is providing us. So I'm going to create an API group, and I'm going to say middleware, and that middleware is going to be we can even check their documentation. What is a middleware? How do we set up a middleware? So I'm going to go to their using a middleware. So this is where I'm going to do it, using a middleware. So one thing before we do a middleware setup is that we go to the kernel.php and set these three of the middleware there. So I'm gonna go to kernel.php within here, and if I go to the route middleware, I need to set these 3 for our middlewares, the Spatie middlewares to work. So I'm gonna go there and set these 3 middlewares. Now we can see there is a role middleware, permission middleware, and a role or permission middleware. So more we'll be using these more role, maybe even permission. So I'm going to go to my API endpoint again. I'm going to say, how do I set a middleware? So I just need to say role, and this is going to be a super admin middleware, which I'm going to use, and I'm just going to say function and it over here, and this function is going to accept API, and then I'm going to create we can have it in a different line. And then I'm going to say API get, and it's going to be users. Also, I'm going to prefix something like this. For auth, I'm going to say maybe admin as the prefix. And then I'm going to associate app HTTP controllers auth, or maybe an admin path, and then I'm going to create an admin user controller, and I might just be pointing to the index function of it. So this is what I'm going to do. Even before creating, I need to create this controller. For that, I'm going to say PHP Addison make controller admin user controller. That's created me an admin user controller. I'm going to go within controller admin, and then there is my maybe I can do one more thing. So instead of this, maybe I'll just say API, so that it provides me some functions which is needed for setting up the API. So let's say I have index store show update and destroy. These are very much specific for creating an API. So I'm going to use this index function, and I'm going to say users equals user user all, or maybe user with, maybe let's first fetch all the users and see whether we are getting the users or not. If not, if not users, then I'm going to say throw new not found HTTP exception, where I say users not found. Maybe that is enough. That's it. And otherwise I'll return this users now. I have not done any proper handling yet, because this is just to see whether our API is working or not. We will create a transformers, we will create a proper response type later in the episode, but then this is more to do with how do we set up this library to have roles and permissions. So already we have created it. Maybe uncomment the route which we created. That's my users route. And then if I do a PHP artisan API routes, it should show me all the routes available now. So it's showing I have this new API admin users route available. So I'm going to execute that and try to see whether I'm getting the users back or not. So I already have tried it out earlier, and it's saying connection refused. That means I need to run this artisan. Okay, why is it saying server should also be there? It's already running API. Okay, I think it was on. Okay, now it's running. Started. User is not logged in. That means I need to do a login. This was created in the last episode. If I try to log in, I don't have the user available. Call to member function empty on string. I think there is an issue even in our login auth function. Let me go fix that first. So that's more to do with this, I guess. Authorization. I think I can use any other HTTP exception. Maybe I can say access to unauthorized HTTP exception. Maybe this should fix that. This was the 401 unauthorized. So this user is unauthorized. So we have to go to the database and see who is a user, who is a admin, and try to see. The first thing first, we'll do that. This is my user who's an admin. I'm going to log in that user. Password is test123, I think, and it's returning a token. So I'm going to use this token. And then going to fetch all the users. Okay, I think I did not copy it. Or maybe Control C. Yep, now it should be fine. So it's returning all the users, all the 26 users, I think 23 users which we created. And let's also check whether their association with the roles is also existing. So for that, I'm going to do a trick over here. I'm going to say with this is already added. This whatever I'm going to do, this is already added within the has roles which I had added as a trait. It should ideally take care of this roles which I am trying to access here. So what is going to happen is it's going to also show all the roles associated with this user. So let's do that now. See, it's giving me this user is a super admin, and it's not well formatted yet. We need to still transform it to look a little better than this. So it's also showing that each and every user who we had created and who had assigned different roles are also, it's also showing here. This is the user, he has a system admin role, he has a store admin role. There were some store admins we had created, and there was some also some customers which we had created. So all of these is available, and also we can look at what are the permissions associated with them just by running, because this is how it drills down from user to roles into the permission. So it will also ideally show even the permissions which is possible with different users. So this is important. Let's say when if you need all of this information, let's say if you want to, let's say downgrade some of their permissions. So that is one reason they recommend that instead of attaching roles, it's better that we attach permissions to the user, so that let's say if you are listing, if you go to an admin panel and then you look at a user, and if you edit that user's permissions, it should ideally show all of these checkboxes checked, let's say approve user and everything, and you can then uncheck some of the things and save it, so that the permissions are then maybe revoked, some of these permissions are revoked. So this is something maybe which is interesting for if your system is a little more flexible in terms of how you are giving permissions to the user. But then otherwise, this is pretty much what what is needed for my system. I'm going to stick with the roles based approach, where I'm going to associate or assign roles to the users. So I think this is pretty much what I wanted to cover in this episode, where I wanted to just show you how to associate users. So one other thing which I can maybe show you is let's say I'm going to also log into another as a user who's maybe maybe I'll just pick up the 11th user who's not he's not a who's not a super admin, but more, maybe this guy is more of I don't know, he's more a role 5, so maybe he's a system admin or a store owner or something. So if I log in with that user, I should not be seeing all of these responses. Instead, it should say invalid user. So let's try logging in this user first. Did I mess it up? Let me go back. Maybe I'll just pick up this user and then try to log him in. And it gives me a new token. And this token is for maybe a system admin or a store owner. So if I try to access that same resource right now, it should ideally not allow him. So user does not have the right roles to access this. It's already 403 restricting this specific user. So this is how it is helping us in accessing different endpoints and then controlling, or at least restricting this access through this middleware, which is readily available. So you keep adding more and more. Let's say if system admin is also allowed to, maybe who was this user right now? I don't know whether it was a store admin or an owner, store owner. Let's say I'm just gonna update this and trying to execute it. He is not a store owner, looks like. So he's maybe a store admin. I don't know. Yeah, so he was a store admin. That's the reason now he's allowed. So ideally, this is how it is helping us. You can set up these middlewares and then restrict some of the access to some of the endpoints, maybe which is very much specific to an admin. Then you can keep it within the super admin middleware, and then you can keep drilling down the different roles within the middleware, and then keep giving access to some of the endpoints in your system. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you liked it. Keep subscribed. More and more things are coming, because this is the base foundation for setting up the system. Without roles and permissions, we can't really create a scalable system, which I think this will make sense when we move forward with some of the other API endpoints which we will create in the coming episode. So until then, keep subscribed, like this video, share it if you can, and then watch out for more in the coming episodes. So until then, it's bye from me.